Ryan Chilcote, who joins me now. He's a journalist and political analyst. When you see pictures of all those people gathered outside the courthouse, Ryan, so much focus and attention on this verdict. Just put into context for us how important this is going to be.
This could be the most explosive verdict that we hear in 2021. Remember exactly how explosive the whole ordeal was when George Floyd died. That caused a huge amount of turmoil in the United States, which sort of got put on the back burner, if you will, was put on the back burner with everything that was happening with the pandemic. But it's very much back, and it could really come back based on, depending on what we hear from the 12 jurors. We know that they've reached this verdict, and we know that it is going to be announced in the next 20 minutes. Everyone's braced for it. I should point out that they're braced not just in Minneapolis, where the verdict is going to be read, where Mr. Chauvin is being tried, but in cities throughout the United States. The National Guard has been deployed in Washington, D.C., in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles. So this really has far-ranging consequences, not just for Minnesota.
We were hearing Joe Biden, US President, talking about speaking with Floyd's family a little earlier on. How, in terms of his relatively new administration, how much of a challenge do you think this issue poses about race relations and how the black community are policed?
I mean, it's a huge issue, and obviously it's one that Joe Biden ran on. It's hugely important to him. And I think he felt it was important to say his view. He, by the way, called George Floyd's family today. He spoke with the press. He said he thought that the evidence was overwhelming and that he was praying that the right verdict would be reached, which I think is quite a lot for the president to say ahead of a verdict being read. But obviously, President Biden and the Biden administration want to get ahead of this and want to point out that whatever the decision that's made by this jury, there can be no question that the Biden administration wants to improve race relations and wants to tackle this problem of police brutality and the use of force in black communities, where time and time again, on an almost daily basis in the United States, we're seeing almost exclusively young black men subjected to what looks an awful lot like police brutality.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Because even if you get the full weight of the law coming down on Derek Chauvin, even if he's in prison for 40 years, that would seem to be an anomaly in an otherwise uninterrupted run of white police officers being able to kill and harm young black men with impunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a difficult one because this verdict is unlikely to satisfy many people. You pointed out the potential of 40 years in prison. That's if he's convicted of murder by second-degree murder. But it's more likely, if he is convicted of second-degree murder, that he would get something more like 11 to 13 years. 40 years is the absolute maximum. That's the most severe of the three charges that he's facing, the former policeman. And so, will 11 to 13 years, if he is found guilty of second-degree murder, placate the tens of thousands of people that are likely to take to the streets today in the United States and cities around the United States? I think the answer is no, because what we're seeing is a whole procession of these incidents. Now, the police, perhaps understandably, point out that they have a very difficult job to do in difficult neighborhoods. They're facing serious threats. Often the people that they're up against are armed. But the black community is saying that may be the case, but it's almost always in our communities, and we don't see the need for such what they consider to be excessive force. So ultimately, whatever's decided in this court today isn't really going to address the core issue, and that's how American cities are policed and how force is applied when the police want to apprehend a suspect. Ultimately, these 12 jurors just have to decide whether the prosecution was able to convince them beyond a reasonable doubt that this former policeman intended to intended to kill Mr. Chauvin and is guilty of second-degree murder. That's a little bit different than solving the whole problem of police brutality in Black communities.
Indeed. Ryan, thank you very much indeed for that. Ryan Chilcote there live from London.